Hello, everyone. Jack Hudson here, coming at you with another tier list video. I promise eventually in the future there will be actual like book reviews and manga reviews and stuff like that on this channel. But I've been working on a couple different projects that I need to finish first, and then after that I can really put my focus on this channel. Um, but recently I just completed my second read through of the Wheel of Time, and I want to rank the books. Um, this will be kind of a personal experience video, as long as a tier list video. I'll be going over like how I felt during the books and like you know what I think their placement is. Overall, before we start, I just want to give an overall feeling of the Wheel of Time. I think Wheel of Time is definitely has to be at least at the very minimum your top five fantasy books of all time if you read fantasy for a long time. The world is just so expansive and huge. Not the hugest. I think Malazan technically takes that place. Um, Although Wheel of Time does beat it by book count, I believe. Um, but I do believe Wheel of Time is something very, very, very special. And I think anyone who is into fantasy in the slightest should absolutely at least give it a shot. Because, you know, unlike everyone else that hypes this up, I'm going to be brutally honest. It is way too long. That is my main criticism of Wheel of Time. Is takes way too long, and I'm not sure. I don't want to rag on it too much with the author because during the last couple of books that he actually wrote himself, uh, he was struggling with health issues. So I don't know if that played a factor into it or whether this was just his plan all along. But, Robert Jordan unfortunately felt very ill and died, I believe, right after Knife of Dreams comes out. And then after that, the last three books in the series are co written by Brandon Sanderson. Now, I say co written because Robert Jordan wrote out plans for the last three books. He initially wanted the last three books, which are huge within themselves, to be one large, like 3,000 page book. Obviously, publication, publishers, you know, can't print that many pages and possibly make a profit off it. Although it would be cool if they come out with an edition like that, just to show off, not even to read, just to show off. Um, but yeah, so after he died, Brandon Sanderson, who you may know as author of the Cosmere, aka Mistborn, aka the Stormlight Archives, wrote a very nice letter, or not letter, but a blog post, just saying like Robert Jordan means so much to me, yada yada yada, and then Robert Jordan's wife read Mistborn, or one of her um, people that she worked for gave her Mistborn to take a look at because Robert Jordan's wife actually edited his books. So she was a vital role in the Wheel of Time. She was very much attached to her husband's work. So then she goes over to Brandon and she says, Wheel of Time, my husband has notes. Do you think you can finish it? And Brandon Sanderson, I think his video explaining it, you could just look up Brandon Sanderson Wheel of Time story. Um, Very much describes like why he thought he was the perfect pick and why I definitely agree with him, because she could have either asked someone who was a huge fan, in which case the writing may suffer because, us fans, we get carried away and stuff and want to fill in every single detail and stuff like that. So if it was an uber fan but not that much of a writer, then that suffers. If it was a really good writer but didn't really much care for the series, then that would suffer as well because the fans wouldn't get their wouldn't get what they deserved, you know, and may have gotten a really good written book, but like satisfactory for the story may have gone down. So Brandon fit right in the middle. He had been reading the books ever since they were coming out when he was a kid. Was devastated by the Robert Jordan death news, so he thought, not so much that this could launch his career, although it very much did, but to complete the Wheel of Time in the right way. And honestly, it's the best outcome that could have came after Robert Jordan's death. Like, if Robert Jordan died, and this is the best outcome that Brandon Sanderson got to finish it. Because initially, I think I heard, I think it's in that video that I mentioned that George R. R. Martin was in the run to complete it, and that would have been not so great because he hasn't even finished his own book series, which we'll do a tier list on that eventually. But he hasn't even finished his own book series, and I think tonally they don't really align. There's some very dark elements to the Wheel of Time, but like Game of Thrones is very much grounded in reality and like very nihilistic, whereas like at every Wheel of Time, at the end of every Wheel of Time book, you always feel like there's kind of hope for the universe. Whereas George R. R. Martin, it's like no. um, Not to discredit George R. R. Martin as a writer, in fact he's one of the greatest writers in fantasy history. It's just I think his recent fame, unfortunately, has him tied up where we'll probably never see the end of an Song of Ice and Fire. Um, I should probably do a whole video essay on who I think, you know, would be good if he never finishes it and left notes or whatever. But that's sidetracking. Right now, Wheel of Time. So I'll get into my experience of this. Again, time codes down below if you just want to see the rankings. Like, perfectly fine with that. Um, so I had read all these books in high school throughout my 4 years of high school. It took me 4 years to finish the Wheel of Time. I started freshman year with The Eye of the World and then ended with A Memory of Light. And I actually just read New Spring, so New Spring is the only new addition to all this. I decided to reread The Wheel of Time simply because I enjoyed it so much upon first reread, but I also didn't capture a lot. Sometimes when you read books when you were younger, you don't really like take in all the prose and stuff and what the author is actually trying to do. And you're just mainly in it for the story. Um, when I started like a year or two ago, I wanted to look at the Wheel of Time, you know, through what I am now as an adult and as a more experienced fantasy reader. Um, I've read all sorts of fantasies. I know what I like. I know what I dislike. And all of that. So these books do mean a lot to me. I have them all in physical print, and I have a lot of them on audiobook because I really like the audiobooks. Um, but yeah, okay. Without further ado, all that aside, let's get into the first Wheel of Time book to ever be published. That is The Eye of the World. I'm not going to hesitate here. This book is absolutely fantastic in every way you could possibly imagine. The prose are great. The characters are great. The story is great. All of it fantastic. Essentially what Robert Jordan did. And this book is very much the only criticism you can really have of this book, in my opinion, is that it feels very much like Fellowship of the Ring, aka the first book of the Lord of the Rings. And Robert Jordan said he did that on purpose. Because the main concept, initially, for this book at least, was, Bill, like Frodo, just kind of goes along with Gandalf. He's like, all right, I guess I'll leave my hometown forever and go join on this very dangerous adventure, even though most of my life I've been a sheltered hobbit. Like, he kind of just goes without any question, which, is still great and all because it's very much a keeping with Frodo's character, because he wants to see the large world. But what if you took like three townsfolk that really didn't even want to go? Like, they're just comfortable. They had their whole life plan set up. They were going to marry the local town girl and have kids, own a farm, and that was their plan throughout their entire life. And what they kind of knew deep down inside what was going to be their entire life was this structure. And then all of a sudden, a bunch of Trollocs, aka the baddies in this series, come over and destroy your entire town. Completely obliterate. And instead of helping your townsfolk clean up, you're told by this magical wizard, aka called Aes Sedai, they're female, basically sorceress, and they say, hey, we think one of you is the Dragon Reborn, aka the people who either break the world or save it from the Dark Lord. that's a lot to take in, especially when your town just got obliterated. So obviously, they're pretty hesitant, and they're pretty young in this. I think in the first book they're about 17 or 16. They grow up pretty fast along the series, um, and then they're just thrown into this adventure. And I mean, Brandon Sanderson has said himself that when he takes notes on how to write a series, he or write a book, this is his first book that he goes to. The structure is fantastic. The pacing is incredible. We get our introduction to, at first, what we think could possibly be three potential people that could be the Dragon Reborn, which is Rand, Perrin, and Matt. That we realize. I hope this isn't a spoiler, but I mean, if you know anything about the series, you kind of get it. Rand is the Dragon Reborn, and that scares him. I like how much it scares him in the beginning of the end of this book, and you really kind of feel that like he's lost all sense of like he can't be a townsboy anymore. He still struggles with it throughout the earlier books, but like this is where he kind of like comes to realize that he's never going back to the Two Rivers, which was his hometown and stuff. And yeah, so earlier books, you think Moraine is kind of annoying, and Nynaeve is kind of annoying because all they do is kind of complain and order Rand around, and you kind of feel bad for him. But like as the books continue on, even characters you were kind of not so keen on, slowly become your favorite. Like Nynaeve is one of my favorite characters in the whole Wheel of Time series. She's like an S tier character to me. But yeah, so the Eye of the World is the first one. I'm gonna try to keep it as non-spoilery as possible. Just only talk about basic plot details and such. But the Eye of the World, the Great Hunt is good. It very much feels like what would have been the middle point of a trilogy, which initially the Wheel of Time was going to be. But Robert Jordan kind of sneakily like saw the success of the books and was like, "How about we keep going?" And then the publisher's like, "We're making tons of money. All right, have at it." Um, and I think it is quite good. I don't think it is S tier. It's it's very self-contained, which is kind of odd for the Wheel of Time because a lot of the Wheel of Time is just one. At a certain point, it just becomes one continuous story, and like doesn't really have a lot of like, this is the main plot point, and here we go. Um, and that's where it becomes very like self-focused in the book, where like this is the plot now, here we go. Whereas at another point in the series, it's just about the the overarching part of the plot of the entire series. Um, but it is quite good. Um, I like how Rand is kind of coping with the fact that he is the dragon, who he can tell, who he can't tell. How the Aes Sedai he feels are trying to control him, and he doesn't like that very much. Um, we get a little bit more characteristics of Matt. Matt really comes to his own in the next book, and the books after that, he slowly becomes the favorite character. I don't think there was a ton of Perrin in this. I think Perrin's still trying to cope with his newfound powers. I'll just say that. Um, and yeah, I really like Lan throughout these earlier books because he's very much a mentor to Rand, and I kind of like that kind of feeling. But yeah, so that is the Great Hunt. Very solid entry. And then we get to the Dragon Reborn, which initially was going to be the final book. Rand was gonna face the Dark One. We turn out in the end of this book that that's not the case. I have a lot of criticisms of this. Ooh, jeez. I have a lot of criticisms of this book. One of which is not a lot of Rand, which is fine because a lot of these books don't have a lot of Rand. But the pacing is very, very slow for what should feel like a climactic kind of battle. We do get a lot of Aes Sedai stuff with Egwene, who was part of the Two Rivers as well, and Nynaeve. I believe we get introduced to Elaine in this book or the Great Hunt. It's kind of hard to keep track with all these books, but we get introduced to her, kind of like Aes Sedai society, what the tower's like, and everything like that. And yeah, I don't like how it's paced. It's paced draggingly slow. It's not to the point where it's the worst in the series, but I don't think it's quite up there. I really struggle with this entry in the series, and I if I were to reread the series again, which I definitely will, I don't know if I would. I mean, I would definitely read it. I think I would do audiobook for it and just kind of put it in the background to get context of the next and one of the best books in the Wheel Time fandom's opinions, The Shadow Rising. Now, I do not actually believe that this is S tier. I know that's a hot take, but I think it struggles with the pacing too. Not a ton happens in this. It's more setup and stuff. However, I mean, I say not a lot happens, but at the same time, Rand meets the Aiel, which are very, very important to the main line of the story, um, and introduces characters from that, and introduces a shocking reveal to the Aiel people. Yeah, I believe it's in this book, or if it's not in this book, then it's in the next one. Um, but we get introduced to Fail, which is Perrin's, um, love interest, and I actually like that dynamic a lot. A lot of people criticize them. I like their early dynamic. It's very kind of flirtatious. She's kind of mean to him, but in like a way like I don't want to admit that I like you, but I really like you, kind of thing. And this is where this book actually is where I really started to like Perrin. Like Perrin is actually one of my favorite characters. Like number one favorite character. I love Perrin. I love how Robert Jordan takes this generic muscly warrior dude and kind of makes him incredibly vulnerable, because he doesn't want to hurt people, but he's aware of his size and stuff. And like, I believe in this one, he goes back to the Two Rivers and he kind of recuperates what's happened to the village and how he can make it into a stronghold where the White Cloaks aren't constantly taking it over. Um, but yeah, you get to kind of see more of the White Cloak dynamic too with Perrin's story and how they're kind of assholes. But yeah, I would put this in A tier. I would say it's perfect. I'm putting S tier as absolutely perfect. Shadow Rising is not perfect. You could say the same for the Fires of Heaven, but I think the Fires of Heaven is. I think what's more important in the Wheel of Time books, besides characters and plot, is the pacing. And Fires of Heaven is great. Like, it didn't even feel like a lot of these books are like 1,000 pages minimum, and this one doesn't even feel that way. You just like speed right through it. It's like with all the action and adventure, and especially the ending with Rand's showdown with a certain someone is really really cool. I would say this is S tier. I wouldn't put it past Eye of the World, but it's definitely my personal favorite of the entire series, which is saying a lot. Or one of my, you know, I have a top three, which you'll see um, in order. But yeah, oh, if we're doing it that way, then yeah, no, Shadow Rising is definitely better than like Shadow Rising is like right on the edge of S tier, but like it has a couple of pacing issues. And then we have Lords of Chaos, which is kind of a mixed bag for a lot of people. It has the box, which I won't explain any further. It has the box, and that's very essential to Rand's character and kind of his mental state going forward. Um, one thing I will say about the Dragon Reborn is that like it really capitalizes on like Rand kind of going a little nuts. So, and then Shadow Rising and Fires of Heaven, it has touches of that, but like Lords of Chaos is where it really comes into hand. Now, I actually quite like this book. Um, I would even go as far to say that it is in A tier. I know that might be a hot take. A lot of people say this is B tier stuff, but like, I like the formation of the Ashaman, aka the male channelers and stuff like that, and that ending reveal is just so awesome with the Ashaman and stuff like that. But yeah, so Lords of Chaos. a lot of good. I don't want to keep repeating myself. So I'll say like certain characters where they shine in certain books because if you don't know, I think there's over like or just about 100 POVs in the whole Wheel of Time. So going through all the characters and stuff is not really an option. And I want to keep this as like spoiler free as possible. Here's technically where we hit the slog. I do like Crown of Swords quite a bit. I would say it's up there, but we're definitely stepping down from quality a little bit. But we get to see kind of Ran coming to like, okay, I am the Dragon Reborn. What does that really mean? I have to prepare for the last battle, and like pretty much starting from this book is like where he really starts to kick that emotion and stuff like that. And this is where I kind of don't like the pacing, is because throughout all the rest of these books, he keeps saying the last battle's coming. The last battle's coming soon. Every character, the last battle's coming soon. The last battle's coming soon. We have all of these to go. It's not coming too soon. With the grand scheme of the timeline, it sure is, because I think these books take place within like maybe 3 or 4 years. I don't know. I mean, they age significantly, but or not significantly. They age, but they definitely do age quite a bit. Um, but it's not like every book is a year, if you know what I mean. If you catch my saying. But yeah, I mean, it's just kind of dull. It has a lot of good Nynaeve stuff. I will say that Nynaeve, definitely. She already started. I already started liking her a little bit more, but this book is where I really, really liked her. And then Lords of Chaos, which I forgot to mention, is like Matt's really good in that too. I like Matt's stuff. Now, here's where we're gonna get the lowest one, or one of the lower ones. Path of Daggers. It just feels like nothing happens. Like I don't even remember what happens half of the time. In Path of Daggers, it just felt incredibly slow and a meaningless book. I say at the bare minimum for Wheel of Time, you could combine two books into one. Um, because like it's just like, why make a whole book about like kind of like miscellaneous stuff, which we'll get into Towers of Twilight later. Um, yeah, it's very bad. Um, but yeah, it's just not a lot. Stuff happens obviously, but like in the grand scheme of things, and this is where again, where the whole main arching plot is supposed to take up more importance, and we're dealing with like, I don't know, not so great things. It's just it's not the best. It's very all these are very well written. The prose are fantastic, but not a big fan. Winter's Heart, which is technically part of the slog, but I like this because Elaine's character really kicks it up a notch, quite a bit, and I like it for that reason. And I like this one is like the politic book to me. It's like, especially with Elaine, explaining I gotta stop saying big words. Explain like her position and how important it is to the world and stuff like that. She's not only an Aes Sedai, but like a possible potential for a ruler. I'll just put it at that. And what that kind of means. I would put it above here. I would actually, yes, I would put it in B tier. It is definitely part of the slog, but I find it very enjoyable. Unlike Towers of Twilight, yeah, that's high D tier. This is like, you could recap the entire book, even though it's 1,000 pages, in like 10 minutes, and it's just like there's a chapter where they focus on getting grain. I think it's grain from like ghosts with Perrin for food supplies and stuff. And it's like, yes, I understand this is important and stuff you don't think about, but goddamn, does it drag the whole book, and like it just drags the entire series. Like I believe you could mix Path of Daggers and like Towers of Twilight. In fact, these three, Winter's Heart, Towers of Twilight, Path of Daggers, I feel like you could kind of mix them up a little bit, into one book, so it doesn't feel as long. Because these center four books, Crown of Swords, Winter's Heart, Path of Daggers, and Towers of Twilight, are like really like, you could mix these two books, or you could mix these two into one book and these two into one book. Not in that order, obviously, because this one comes after, or this one comes before this one. This one comes after. You get the point, okay? You saw the order line, all right. But fact of the matter is, the four middle books, aka these four, could just be two books instead of four. I firmly believe. But, you know, that being said, yeah, like the 10th book is just not good. It's just, oof, like, even if you've gone through the series and by the 10th book you're like, I can't do this anymore, I wouldn't blame you. Or any of these middle books, I would not blame you at all. Um, you really got to stay loyal to the series, you know. And it does definitely, it we'll get to it, but it does pay off in the end, for sure. But then we have Knife of Dreams, which is where we truly felt that Robert Jordan, as Wheel of Time fans, we truly felt that Robert Jordan was finally coming into his own after these kind of middle books that were like so in quality of story, but we still enjoyed them and hold them very dear to our hearts. Knife of Dreams was like Robert Jordan's really his kind of final full length book. And like he was on track to actually going toward the final battle because, as I said before, these three books were originally just going to be one gigantic book. So he was ready to put all his cards on the table and take that plunge into the final book. And it really shows this is like, you know, the last book where there's any resemblance of peace. There hasn't really been peace, but any resemblance of relaxation. After this, it's full steam ahead. The final battle's coming. So I'm gonna put it in S tier. It is very well written. It's one of Robert Jordan's best. Um, and yeah, I love. Actually, you know what? I think I would put it above Eye of the World. Honestly, um, you know, his greatest was the beginning, and his greatest was the end. And I think I think that's fair. Then we have Gathering of Storms. This one is good, but you know, Brandon Sanderson kind of tries to emulate Robert Jordan's writing, and some of it hits, some of it doesn't. It isn't until these last two books that he really just tries to find his own voice, um, and stuff like that. I believe Robert Jordan wrote all the prologues and epilogues to these, so um, that stuff, you know, is all Robert Jordan. Whereas the middle section, you know, some of it's Robert Jordan, some of it's Brandon Sanderson. Most of it is Brandon Sanderson. But yes, I don't know. This is mostly set up. Um, I would put it. This is tough. I would definitely put it above that. I would put it like right here. I feel like that's fair. Um, but yeah, now we have Towers of Midnight, which is the midway point. A lot of action happens here. I don't like Perrin's trial at all. I feel like it was pretty pointless, but I still do like Perrin's character and stuff like that. I don't feel like a lot of Wheel Time fans say he's dumbed down. I don't feel like he's dumbed down necessarily. Um, I just feel like he's acting irrational, because he has a lot of pressure now that he's finally, after all these books, been like, okay, yeah, I am the leader of the Two Rivers and I accept that, you know, because ever since Shadow Rising, he's kind of had to be like, oh, but I do not want to be a leader. I just, and it's like, guy, just you're the guy for the job. You just gotta accept it, even if you don't like it. You know, rulers that don't want to rule often become the best. Um, but yeah, Towers of Midnight is above Gathering Storm. I don't say they're the best of the best, because I want to save that for a select few. We are getting A tier heavy a little bit. We are. So you know what I'm gonna do, and this might be controversial. I'm gonna bump that down a little bit, a little bit, a little bit. I know that's a lot of people are pissed right now that Lords of Chaos is A, Grey Hunt is B, but like, you know, that's just how I'm feeling right now. You know, we're getting a little A tier heavy. We're about to get a little S tier heavy too, because this is the final book of the Wheel of Time. And talk about payoff. Like, you know, Wheel of Time, you would think like, you know, he wouldn't have enough time, but clearly he had three books, enough time to tie up all the loose ends. Brandon Sanderson does all loose ends in the Wheel of Time, and it's just generally a very well written book, and um, you know, it's fantastic. The ending is that epilogue makes me cry every time. Um, it's great. You're gonna see it in my top books of 2022 list. That's for sure. Um, it's probably gonna be in the S tier. Spoiler alert. But yeah, I thoroughly enjoy Memories of Light. Uh, it's like you feel like going through all that slog and all the other books is definitely worth it once you read the Memory of Light. Like so much is paid off, and it's just a very good book. One of the best fantasy books, in my opinion. Then we have A New Spring, which is a prequel book, which this is the first time I actually ever read it. All this was my second read through. This was the very first time I read New Spring. I think it's pretty good. I think it's fine. It doesn't add a lot to the mythos. It just adds, you know, upon next read through, I feel like I'll appreciate Moraine more in the earlier books because of this. And where it ends is like, oh, haha, woo. It definitely feels like prequel itis a little bit, which that annoys me. Like when a prequel is a prequel, it still should, I believe, stand on its own. Like you don't need the rest of the material. Like I kind of hate it when prequels like, oh, I know that character. He's from the other series. Oh, that's great. And it's like, no, just like have your own thing. You can have some of that, but don't make it abundantly obvious. And New Spring has some of that, unfortunately, especially that ending. Um, which annoys me. If you want to know what a good prequel is, watch Pearl in theaters now. It's not nearly getting enough attention as it should. It's a great prequel to the film X. If you're into horror movies, like Pearl is great, 10 out of 10. Um, but yeah, New Spring is just kind of like it's good material. It's good addition. It's a good addition to the overall Wheel of Time. And just because I put it in C tier doesn't mean, again, like this is just within the grand scheme of Wheel of Time. Like a lot of these books are still some of the best in fantasy. But yeah, so that's my list for Wheel of Time on my second read through. Finally completed it. Feels good. Thanks, coach. I feel like I should have a towel around me. Like, thanks, coach. Yeah, it was a tough game in the middle portion, but toward the end, we just knocked it out of the park. But yeah, so that's the Wheel of Time, in my opinion, how it should be ranked. This is the final decision. No one else's opinions matter besides mine. Obviously, I'm joking. Yeah, Wheel of Time, one of the greatest of all time, top five at least. It has to be in series. And maybe I'll do like my top 10 fantasy series of all time on this channel. But yeah, so that about wraps it up. I got a couple other stuff to plug in real quick, and then I'll let you go. First is the Sinister Sheep channel. It is kind of my main channel. This one's more of a side channel to focus on books and stuff like that, and reading, whereas like my main channel is for like movies, anime, stuff like that. So that's Sinister Sheep. That'll be linked down below. And then I have Black Hudson Productions, which is where all of me and my friends' podcasts are and shows and stuff like that. Please subscribe to that one. We put a lot of effort into that one. Me, Peter, and Mark Keith put a ton of effort into that channel. So please support it. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. You have Daniel Green's tier list video to click on. You really didn't need to click on mine. This was just me to get my thoughts about the Wheel of Time and scream into the void. But like, if you did click on this besides Daniel Green's one, thanks. I appreciate it. Or any other of the famous booktubers. Like if you clicked on this one miraculously, thank you. First off for sitting through this whole thing if you have. And yeah, so thank you guys so much, and I'll catch you next time. Bye.